Fintech Chatter, brought to you by Tier 1 People, leaders in Fintech executive search. Welcome to Fintech Chatter, the show where I connect with fintech leaders for a bit of a chat. I'm your host, Dexter Cousins, and in 2022, we're showcasing some of Australia's next wave of fintech entrepreneurs. Show your support by hitting subscribe and like on YouTube, and if you're a podcast fan, please leave us a 5-star review. It really helps us in promoting the show to others in the fintech community. Now on to today's guest. Cath Whitaker is CEO of SelfWealth. ASX-listed SelfWealth runs Australia's most popular low-cost share trading platform. Based out of Melbourne, SelfWealth is leading the way in stock market investment for everyday Australians. The company was taken to a successful IPO in late 2017 and continues to deliver value to shareholders. With a career spanning across the globe, Cath shares her experiences as an international fintech leader. Cath, welcome to the show.
Thanks very much for having me, Dexter.
It's great to have you with us and making your Fintech Chatter debut. So before we get into it, can you tell us a little bit about SelfWealth?
Yeah, SelfWealth is a platform that has been in Australia for just a decade now. We are number 4 in terms of wealth management trading platforms. So we sit behind 3 of the big 4 banks, and we are the leading challenger brand in the Australian market.
Awesome. So when you say kind of sit behind, is this like a white label platform or is it a bespoke tech?
No, definitely not. We're very proud of our SelfWealth brand. We are truly independent. So when I say sit behind, so it means that 3 of the big 4 banks occupy the top 3 spots in terms of number of customers on their platform. And we are proudly number 4, taking out one of the big 4 banks 6 months ago.
Fantastic. So when you look at that positioning to a highly competitive market, what is it that SelfWealth has done differently, or what's the big problem that you've set out to tackle that's got you that success?
Absolutely. So it's important to understand the genesis of SelfWealth. So as I mentioned, we did start 10 years ago and we came out to solve a problem. We wanted to move away from trading investment being just a transactional process for retail investors. And so we set ourselves up as a community of retail investors. So SelfWealth was actually started as the Facebook for retail investors. As time went on, there was an opportunity to build out our trading capabilities. We were the very first platform in Australia to introduce flat fee brokerage, which is something that we've held true to. It's been a model now that, of course, many have followed us, but we've never veered away from ensuring that we have trust on the platform, that we partner with organisations that can support us for not just days, but for decades. So, our partners being the likes of ANZ and Refinitiv. And we really built out a platform where people know they can come to us for independent thought, leadership and content and the very best customer service.
Awesome. So when you say the kind of Facebook model, we're not talking about meme stocks and meme trading here, but more of that kind of social kind of element where people share insights. Is that right?
Correct. It's about insights. It's about, looking at what others are investing in. And of course, we all have our different investment journeys. No 2 people are the same in terms of what they're looking to achieve. We all have different risk profiles. We all have different areas of interest in terms of investment. So, we know the folk who are more keen on the tech stocks versus those who are keen on the ESG opportunities. And that really is what SelfWealth is about. It's making sure that we understand what our customers are looking for, build community, support, information around what those needs are.
Now, how long have you been CEO for, Cath?
Yes, coming up to 16 months now, an absolute privilege to be in this position. After 20 years abroad, working across the US, UK, Singapore and Brazil, it really was time to come home and find a wonderful home that is SelfWealth, an Aussie-made fintech startup that during financial year 21 was cash flow positive, which in itself is a massive achievement. And, to be able to take the reins and take it from where it was to where I see is a very long growth journey, super exciting.
Yeah. Could you tell us maybe, Zen, a little bit about where the business has come from and the origins of the business and the idea?
Yeah, I absolutely love the SelfWealth story. It truly did start in the back of a garage. It came about, with our founder, Andrew Ward, and he pulled in a number of very talented people, technology people, and I'm very proud to say of the original 6 people at SelfWealth, we still have 3 of them.
Wow.
In the building today. And so through that, it became a true team. And, through pulling in various talent at different times and building out our capabilities, as I mentioned, to go from a community of folk who are sharing, investment advice and building out our data set around investing, which, is still very much, leading edge development, to then introducing ASX share trading. And we are very proud to have our HIN-based CHESS-sponsored model. We believe that legal ownership of shares is extremely important. We then opened up our US trading back in December 2020. Of course, very good timing with this little thing called COVID. And, we certainly benefited from the COVID tailwinds, but truth be told that we were already on our path of growth before COVID happened. And the timing was absolutely right from a SelfWealth perspective. We now have well over $8 billion worth of asset value on our platform. And, we're the true Aussie startup story that's now listed on the ASX.
Awesome. So the business listed in 2017. What was the thinking behind listing the business?
Yeah, at that time, there was definitely a need to promote and market SelfWealth, very much around the idea of, brand identity and helping Australians understand that, we were a very credible alternate to not only the big 4 share trading platforms, but also for those do-it-yourself retail investors, that there was a platform available to them. So, hence the listing, to obtain the funding, of course, to get the marketing going and brand recognition, and also, of course, to build out the team in terms of, introducing new products and features onto the platform.
Now, it's been a really kind of interesting couple of years in this space. We've seen, the kind of rise of crypto. A report last week from ASIC where I think that, they suggested that 44% of retail investors now hold crypto assets. What have you seen have been the kind of the biggest challenges in growing the business as there's more competition and now there's different asset classes that people seem to be putting their money into?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, there are a couple of things there. The addressable market for retail investors in Australia more than doubled in the last 18 months.
Wow.
So, whilst there are new competitors into the market, with that massive growth in the addressable market, going from 700,000 retail investors to, 1.5 million, there's certainly enough there to get the interest, shall we say, of a number of new competitors. From a SelfWealth perspective, what we do is we're just focused on what we know as our strategy, which is to empower financial freedom for retail investors. We have our customer base, which is, I'd say, more evenly spread across each generation. So whilst, our millennials and Gen Zs do make up 60% of our customers, we do have a very healthy and growing cohort in other generational groups. And look, as we think about wealth management, obviously that doesn't just mean equities. We are the platform where retail investors are going to go to make various investment decisions into varied asset types, including crypto, which, as we have communicated, we are very soon going to be launching our crypto capabilities. But once again, it's done in a very SelfWealth way. We don't follow the pact. We have our own innovations. And so, we want to make sure that crypto is available in a safe and secure way, simple to use, part of a portfolio approach, so that, when folk go in and look at their portfolio, all their hard work, essentially, when it comes into investments, they'll be able to see everything in one place.
Now, we've seen also, I guess, over this last 2 years, the almost meteoric rise of finfluencers and, this kind of Wild West, unregulated approach to investment. And on the flip side, in Australia, we've got highly regulated financial advisors, which is making it really difficult to make that model viable. How has SelfWealth gone about bridging that gap of, offering credible investment advice in a safe way?
Yeah, so long before, ASIC, making a stronger stance on finfluencers, et cetera, SelfWealth made a decision over 12 months ago to not promote, utilise finfluencers in any way, shape or form. The information and content that is available on the SelfWealth platform is only through people that are properly accredited, who we have reviewed. We've also made a stance that we will not pay for content. So people know that when they come to the SelfWealth platform, and education and content is an area that we have invested quite a lot into in the last 12 months. They know that it is truly independent, no strings attached. It is about just doing the right thing for your customers. And that's something that we're going to continue.
Awesome. Now, when you kind of look across the business now, where it's at, what would you how many people are you? Where are you based? What are the plans for looking international, if that's something that's on the radar?
Yeah, so look, we're very proud of our 65 team members that are based in Melbourne. We are proudly Melbourne-based.
So 65 people, and you're number 4 in Australia for this type of platform.
Spot on.
That's
correct.
Incredible, eh?
It is incredible. We've been ruthless in our investments, in our return on investment. I do take, capital allocations extremely seriously, but it also has to be built on a terrific team. It's got to be based on teamwork and available. We do also have a client service function offshore to make sure that we give ourselves 24-hour coverage for the markets that we support. But it's a relatively small team of 7 people. Our focus is based in Melbourne.
Well, that's a really nice little kind of move into the next thing that I wanted to talk to you about. And you mentioned this in the intro that 20 years of international experience. You've worked with some kind of huge financial organizations. What was the biggest kind of challenge for you moving from that type of environment now into a business that not only only has 65 people, also has a strong position in market and is also ASX listed? So there's kind of nowhere to hide, right?
There certainly isn't. And look, I'm a person that always has highly valued transparency and corporate governance. And frankly, I think there should be a lot more of that in fintech, especially when you're dealing with retail investors' cash and their asset holdings. I would like more transparency to be available across all the platforms, whether they're privately or publicly held, so that investors know where their money is really being held. But look, from my perspective, as you mentioned, I've had the absolute privilege of working with some of the largest financial services companies across the world. And, to come back to a fintech, relatively small fintech, everything that used to frustrate me, in big corporate America, obviously is now not the issue in small fintech. But of course, vice versa is applicable in terms of, when it came time, of course, to move office locations from our very small 19-desk location out in suburban Melbourne into the CBD, there was no real estate team that I could refer to. So, very much roll your sleeves up, needing to get involved in a lot more things. But, there's also a great joy that I get knowing every single person's name who is in the SelfWealth team and to have genuine conversations with those people.
What's it like, to be CEO of a smaller business? Is it different to how you kind of imagined it to be?
It's not. It's exhilarating. It's, I know that there's a great responsibility in, the buck stops with me. Making decisions is what sits with me. And so I think from that perspective, one of the frustrations that I found in big corporate America is I wanted to make those decisions, but, it had to be referred up the tree.
Yeah.
Now that's no longer the case. So I take a great joy out of that. Of course, what's then really important is that you have great people around you so that you don't feel that burden is yours and yours alone. And I think it's really important in terms of how people make their decisions. So, what sort of information or data that, should be provided, seeking counsel, being open to others' views, but ultimately making that call at the end of the day.
I guess you're kind of still not, entirely shielded from the challenges, particularly being a listed CEO. What's that been like? Coming in and doing your first fintech CEO gig is hard enough in the spotlight of ASX, where I can imagine just based on the feedback I get from other people in my network that the media kind of spotlight, the analyst spotlight, particularly over this last 12 months where the whole sector's taken a bit of a hit. How have you kind of managed that process and kept your mental health, but also your positivity and energy levels high?
Yeah, look, there's no shortage of opinions. And, it's about recognizing that and recognizing that you can't please everyone all the time. But what you do have to absolutely make sure of is that, you stay true to yourself, that you remind yourself why you're here. And that, again, in terms of things like mental health, having that support network around you, friends, family, colleagues, exercise, taking care of yourself, you have to remind yourself of that and put time and investment into that. We all have only one body, one mind, greatest asset that you will ever own. And, you do need to prioritize yourself for the sake of others.
What's it been like, kind of leading through what's been not just the markets, but, the last 2 years, I think it's been tough on everybody. Where we kind of continually kind of have these, what seem to be even more volatile discussions and debates around work from home, remote working, employee well-being, redundancies. There's a lot going on. How have you managed to kind of keep people motivated and keep the band together as we go through this period?
Yeah, look, it had to be a focus. As you quite rightly say, there is so much going on, and there's so much varying opinions as well. From segments of the employees as well as the employers. There's a very vocal group of people, across professional services at the moment who obviously strongly are advocating for the work from home concept versus others who are genuinely saying, hey, I want to be in the office.
Yeah.
I'm there to learn. I love having that connection. Look, I put myself in that category. Being a fintech and having to move fast, it's so much about collaboration, learning from others, getting that buzz, getting that joy, and just bouncing off each other. So it is something that I'm very conscious of. At SelfWealth, we do advocate a model of 60% of your time in the office. I think it's extremely important for members of the team who may not be as experienced to be able to learn from others. And I think what you need to do is to set that expectation clearly up front in terms of, what the SelfWealth culture is. But look, it has been a difficult period, I know, for many organisations. Again, it just comes back to the culture that you need to promote within your organisation.
Yeah, most businesses that I speak to are finding that they're really struggling on that side. So I think it is time that we have kind of adult conversations, and more I'm speaking with leaders like yourself who are being very clear in their communication that, hey, this is now the model moving forward. This is the expectation. What have you found kind of, because I'm sure that's not going to be for everybody, and kind of what I've also found rather strange is being this assumption from the majority of the workforce that working remotely now is somehow that's always the way it's been, and it's been a kind of right or an entitlement and an employee benefit. How have you dealt with those who've kind of resisted coming back to the office, didn't want to work that way?
Yeah. So, look, again, with our 60% expectation of come to work, that obviously gives flexibility in terms of, the remainder 40%. But again, we do have to be clear on that. It's not a negotiable. And we think that suits the majority of people as well. So, we have, of course, done a variety of initiatives, which we're very proud of, which, very much about getting people to just know each other. So, lunch and learn, social activities. And I think it's really important from a company like SelfWealth's perspective, where we did such a big increase of, team members during the COVID period. So they really did miss that, opportunity to do the meet and greet in the office for the first time. And so we did make it a focus, and, also getting to know people from the different functions that exist within SelfWealth. It's incredible, what you can learn from others with different perspectives, and frankly, to get the passion from other folk as well.
How have you gone about that hiring process then? Because I've been doing this for decades, and I've found it really difficult trying to hire remotely, and just things, simple things that you take for granted that you're never going to get from doing remote hiring or remote interviews. Like when you walk into an office and there's a buzz and an energy where you feel, hey, this is the place for me. How do you kind of get those things across when you're just interviewing people like you and I are chatting right now?
Yeah, no, look, the honest truth is you can only go so far between screens. You're spot on. Obviously, we had to do it because of, lockdowns that were particularly happening in Melbourne, given our world record. So, what was important is as soon as those, lockdown restrictions were lifted, to get that face-to-face contact, whether it be, on a one-to-one basis or whether it be in the broader team. And, we did make that big effort around team building, social fun activities that were truly inclusive, across all generations. And I think that is how we've built such a close-knit team at SelfWealth.
So when you kind of look at hiring people, what are the qualities that you look for? And what did you have to learn about the behaviors, that were different qualities that you look for when you were hiring in large corporates versus when you're hiring now in a fintech of 65 people?
Yeah, do you know what? The qualities are probably same. I'm a person who looks for attitude every single time over experience or skill. Someone who wants to apply themselves, someone who wants to continuously learn, be inquisitive, also be respectful of others. And by that, I mean being able to listen.
Yeah.
But then ultimately someone who wants to like throw themselves into whatever they want to do. For me, it has to be someone who is positive in their outlook in life. And then, of course, you look for the experience and the skills. But, there absolutely has to be that connection with want in an individual. And I think that, in my 20 years plus of, recruiting people, and honestly, I've lost count of the number of people that I've hired over the years. But, it's ultimately being able to connect with that person and, look for people who want the best in life. That's what we look for.
Awesome. When it comes to the other side of it, which is, we're well documented how difficult it is to find the right people. How have you gone about attracting the right people to SelfWealth?
Yeah, I think it's really important that, people understand the true story behind SelfWealth, the ones that what I've already explained in terms of, we're transparent, we're honest, we are going to build the largest platform for retail investors in Australia. We have a very clear vision and we're here to do good things for Australians. And so, but you also, during the recruitment process, you also have to be set, very realistic views in terms of, where you are on that journey, what their specific role will entail. I see so many other organisations who falsely set expectations. People join and then folk wonder, well, why did they leave? Well, did you sell them a Lamborghini?
Interesting you say that, Cath, because I'm having more and more discussions now with leaders where over this last 6 months in particular, people who've left have come back to the organization within 3 to 6 months. Yeah. And I think, there's unfortunately when there is, a talent short market or even a perception of one, a lot of businesses and recruiters will say whatever it takes to get somebody across the line. Correct. Unfortunately, it's people get in there and they realize that it's not how the brochure was, and that creates even bigger problems. So we're all for transparency in the process. Yeah,
and I think as well, for a person like me who's seen multiple cycles, I was, in the UK during the GFC, I've seen various economic cycles working in Latin America, right? I think with that experience as well, you need to be financially stable. That has to be a really big priority. And, certainty, in my view, is like such an important criteria for employees to look at with a company. And look, unfortunately, with the state of the market now and a number of fintechs who are really struggling at the moment, I think, again, a company like SelfWealth, because of our financial prudence, we can legitimately stand up and say, hey, it's not just about kind of pool tables and foosball. It's about, making sure that we've got a stable company who's there to also support you and your families through no matter what the next cycle is.
Yeah. How do you manage the balance of shareholders, employees, and customers? Because I've kind of got a little bit of a theory on this, is that when you're an early stage startup, all you have to worry about typically are your customers and your people. And it's a lot easier to get that balance. But once you get major shareholders in, it kind of creates this, menage a trois, shall I say, where, you've kind of got to try and please everyone. And it's a really, really difficult balancing act to get right. Most organizations that I see will either get, customers or people, but they can never get this kind of balance of satisfying shareholders, satisfying their people, satisfying their customers. How have you gone about managing that balance?
Yeah, look, it is sometimes a difficult balance. Of course, the ideal state is to have shareholders that can understand and appreciate the medium to long-term play. And, you know, that is really important for a company like SelfWealth, who, you know, has set its path on, you know, building out not just here for days, but for decades. And I think that, you know, a lot of that work has been done on our register. But, you know, it is very difficult to achieve because, as you say, sometimes those needs aren't the same. So, you know, the first step is to understand, you know, what those respective needs are. You can't please everyone all the time. But what you must do, which you can never forget, is that, you know, your customers are your voice.
Yeah.
And they are your revenue. They are your lifeblood.
Yeah.
So you absolutely must continue to prioritize those customers and make sure that you're in tune with what they need and want, and to be able to move forward with them.
Yeah, there's a kind of rather famous meme, I think, was attributed to Richard Branson and Virgin, which kind of says the opposite of that, which I've never felt comfortable with. And it's for that reason that you've just said, right? Is that without the customers, people don't have jobs, shareholders don't have anything. And I think, you know, that's imperative that, you know, particularly in the, you know, the world that we're in now, where I think every chief exec that I've spoken to in the last 3-4 years, Cath, if you ask them what their number one, you know, kind of problem was, or, you know, the thing that was keeping them awake at night, you'd hear a lot of things like talent, cybersecurity, you know, funding. But the one thing that everybody shared, whether it was an exec at one of the big 4 banks or it was a founder of a 10-person startup, is what we're building today even going to be relevant in 12 months' time?
Correct.
Because customers now are so demanding, right? They just expect and they'll move on. So I think it's a really interesting insight that you share there, and one that I'd have to say I completely agree with.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Look, the list is long in terms of, you know, interesting technology that's been built, but not particularly useful and doesn't solve a customer need.
Yeah.
So therefore doesn't, you know, translate into, you know, a sustainable, profitable business model. And it's something that, you know, we should all have at the very front of our minds.
Now, you've spent the last 20 odd years living internationally. What was your perception of Australia from a fintech perspective before you came back? And has it changed since you've now been back for 2 years or so?
Yes. So look, my most recent gig was in the States, and it was West Coast. And so, yes, it's fair to say that certainly saw a lot of fintech in the Valley and, you know, further abroad in New York. That scene was certainly growing, and, you know, I ran an innovation centre in Dublin as well. And let me tell you, the Irish tech scene is well and truly flourishing, as in Singapore as well, heavily connected into that scene. So look, my perception of Australia before coming back is, of course, I knew it was going to be smaller than those international locations. Since coming back, I am pleased to see so many passionate people in that space. I think, though, that more can be done in terms of, you know, support from a government perspective as well. You know, all sorts of things in terms of, you know, providing more funding just into the framework generally. You know, there's a lot to be done in terms of sharing, you know, cybersecurity, you know, basically the non-revenue driver support. Of course, you know, visas should be made more freely. I'd like to see more true global sharing of ideas and technology as well, perhaps through conferences. And I think probably more you know, publication and, you know, around, you know, what Australia has to offer to those other international tech bases So yeah, it's pleasing to see what's been done thus far, but I think Australia could be doing a lot more.
Cool. Now, I'm not going to ask you for a specific company here, but I guess, when you look at fintech, which area of fintech has got you most excited and why?
Look, I started getting involved into blockchain technologies back in 2018, and was very pleased and proud to be part of, the first insurance use case, commercialized use case with blockchain. So, look, blockchain for me is something that is still very near and dear to my heart. And, I'm not one of those people that, crypto is not synonymous with blockchain. Yeah. It is just one use case thereof. So from, a wealth management perspective, I think appropriate use of blockchain technologies in terms of, looking at share ownership, for example, or other asset types, such as properties, etc. There's so much that can be done there. It's really exciting. Gives people the certainty that they need, and also, breaks down, those big monolith asset types into, I guess, more consumable segments for, retail investors, which is what I'm all about.
So we're talking on that. I mean, last week there was just an announcement that the ASX kind of CHESS replacement has been delayed again. When that gets off the ground, it's obviously, hopefully, fingers crossed, it is still world leading. What do you think is just taking so long? Because by the time that project gets off the ground, it's going to be 6 years since it was announced. What do you think is kind of really holding blockchain adoption back?
Yeah, look, and I don't know too much about the details about what's happened in the last few years associated with that specific project. But what I think generally in terms of, what's holding blockchain back, I'll go back again and make the statement around, use cases. They can be interesting, but are they useful?
Yeah.
The best uses of blockchain is when they're solving specific problems.
Yeah.
And I think that is what, we need to focus on. And you can solve a problem. It doesn't have to be revenue generating. It can be cost reducing.
Yeah.
And I think from a blockchain perspective, although that may not sound as exciting, is probably a much better use of blockchain technologies.
I always look at my kids as kind of what I feel might be the trends in the future. They love gaming. They spend a lot of money on avatars, but they've never once turned around to me and said, Dad, I really wish I owned this avatar so I could maybe sell it again for a profit and I had ownership rights to it. It's just not something that they think of. Correct. And yet, this seems to be the biggest case for NFTs. It's out there, right? And but you think of, the actual technology behind that seems to lend itself a lot more around property deeds, kind of ownership, right? Things that need to be, kind of set in stone as to how this works. So, what do you see as being, perhaps the ways in which these types of technologies can move beyond the hype and the monkey JPEGs and the kind of this scammy element and start to be really embraced by the corporate world, where they're we're then going to see kind of real adoption.
Yeah, that's it. Like it is about demystifying what it is as well, explaining it in ways that humans understand. I think that's another key thing too. People, as a general rule of thumb, people don't trust things that they can't eloquently explain to others.
Yeah.
So, I think it is about, identifying, those pain points, whether it be vaccination records, for example. Geez, wouldn't that be great if it was on the blockchain somewhere you didn't have to frantically, search around for some certificate, that certificate, et cetera, right?
Yeah.
Make it useful for people and, implement it and then talk about how it was done. And, very shortly it will just, one will roll into the other.
Yeah. It's a bit like, we don't talk about ISPs and how we're talking to each other right now and the technology behind that. We just use it, right?
Absolutely. Yep. Has to just be useful.
Absolutely. Well, Cath, it's been great to have you on the show. What can we expect from SelfWealth in this next 12 months?
Yeah, we've got some very exciting things planned for our retail investors. So, look, we're going to continue on what we do, but better, which is, provide the most simplest, trustworthy solution available for retail investing in the Australian market. We have crypto coming very soon in a very self-wealthy way. And as well, we will be adding additional asset types in the next 12 months. And of course, you have our commitment in terms of independent thought leadership and transparency around our pricing as well.
Cool. And where can people find out more about SelfWealth?
Come on over to selfwealth.com.au or jump on your favourite device and download one of our native apps.
Awesome. And we get some seriously talented people listening to this show. Anybody's out there listening and they like what they hear today and they'd be interested in finding out more about joining SelfWealth, what's the best place for them to go to?
Please come on back to selfwealth.com.au. You'll find our vacancies there or get in contact directly with me. We have our motto at SelfWealth, which is grow you good thing. So if you want to come and grow with us, come on over.
Awesome. Cath, it's been great to have you with us and thanks for joining me today.
Thank you very much, Dexter.
And you can connect with me on LinkedIn and Twitter. That wraps up today's show. Thanks so much for joining us. Please remember to leave us a 5-star review if you're listening on Spotify or iTunes. And until the next episode, stay safe. Fintech Chatter is presented by Tier 1 People, leaders in fintech executive search. We'll help you launch, scale, and innovate by delivering world-class talent. And you can find out more at tier1people.com.